This is the video going over the Chapter 1011 review free response. Okay, so for the first question, you have more information than you need. They gave you the actual original data, which you could plug into your calculator and such, but they gave you all the things you need too. We have our differences. We have our average difference, standard deviation of the differences, and we have this. Now, they gave you more information than you needed because they knew that some people would incorrectly assume this was a two-sample situation. It is a one-sample situation because it's a matched pairs situation. Each car model got a treatment of a woman buying it and a treatment of a man buying it, and we're looking at how much they paid for it. So it's a matched pairs situation. And you can also recognize that because they took the time to find the individual differences. They subtracted first for a reason. Okay, so it's matched pairs, so it's one sample for mu diff. Okay, but they knew some people would assume it was two samples, so they gave you enough information to be able to do it as a two sample as well, and then you would have only lost a little bit of points. So this is a one sample matched pairs. You have to do it that way to get full credit. But if you assumed it was two sample but did it correctly as a two sample, you only lose a few points. Most of your points you still get. Okay, so let's see. Let's go through the key, their solution, and see what they were looking for. So it really is just the SPDC. So we have the state part. They wanted the parameter, and they wanted the hypotheses. So mu diff equals 0, mu diff is greater than 0. They then, for step 2 plan, they wanted the correct test procedure, and they say by name or by formula. They called it a paired t-test, which is kind of a shorthand version for it. We've been calling it by its full name, one sample t-test for mu diff. And then they want the conditions. Now, again, on these rubrics, because they know they're pulling from people that have learned things from different textbooks, they sometimes don't look for everything that our textbook looks for. I am grading you assuming you're learning from our textbook. So there's 3 conditions we're checking here. One is if it's random, which they said it was in the statement. 2, they did not include in the rubric, but I still want you to do it. We can assume that 8 is less than 10% of all the possible car models, or yeah, we could just say assume that. And then 3, for normality, we only have 8 values, so we don't have a big enough sample size for central limit theorem to kick in. So we have to look at the graph of the sample, and that's this guy right here. And it looks like it is not strongly skewed, and I don't see any outliers. So we're okay. They said dot plot reveals a fairly symmetric distribution. So we will continue the second condition, consider the second condition to be met. We say no strong skew and no outliers. We try to be more specific about that. Okay, step 3 is the do part. So they called that correct mechanics. So there's your equation. There's your t-score. They did 7 degrees of freedom, and they got this p-value. Now, they know that different people are using different things. Some are using the table. Some people are using the calculator. Some people are going to round a little bit more than others. So it's okay if your value is not right on. Later on in the rubric, they have like descriptions of how far off you can be. Okay, but regardless, that's a very low p-value. So then you need the conclusion. P is very small, so we reject the null. We have convincing evidence that women pay more than men. Okay. Oh, there is one more thing I wanted to mention. Where is it? I highlighted it. Oh, no, I already talked about it. Yeah, that if you did a 2-sample t-test, you would lose points on naming the correct test, but that's it. And if you did a 2-sample t-test, you should have in the end failed to reject the hoe. Okay, now I'm on to question 2, which is on page 7 of the PDF. So I tried to cross out all the repeated junk in the middle. We're now on page 7 of the PDF. Okay, so looking at number 2, one of the first things I did was try to take all the numbers they gave me and pull them out and figure out what they were. We have means of each sample separately, which means it is a 2-sample situation. They did not somehow pair up. Anyway, we have northern calls and southern calls are different, and we have data to go with each of those separately. We averaged, and at the end, we subtract when we do our final calculation. Okay, so let's see. Let's just go through it. So the state part defining the parameters is right here. And it's also kind of included here. They split it up into 2 parts, but basically it's a difference in mu n and mu s, and they describe it mu n and mu s r. The plan part here is the name of our procedure. For conditions, again, just like on the last one, they are grading as if you've learned this from any of the approved textbooks, and some of them don't really get into our second condition, but our book does, so I expect you to do that. So first condition, they did say that they were random. Second condition, we need to assume that 50 is less than 10% of all response calls for each station, so there's at least 500 response calls for each station. I don't actually know that, so I'm just going to say I'm assuming that. And then for normality, is easy because we have big sample sizes, are bigger than 30, so the central limit theorem kicks in. Okay. Then here's the do part. They wrote the actual equation up here with variables. And then now here it is plugged in. And to actually do that calculation, so when you write it on your test, you write out the whole equation with the numbers plugged in, and then you jump to your calculator, put it all on your calculator. In this case, you'd use 2samp t int to get your actual answer. And then here's your conclude part, 95% confident, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and then for part B, they said that their theory was that there was no difference between them. Or no, that there is a difference. Their theory was that there is a difference between them. But the fact is 0 is inside of our confidence interval. Our confidence interval went from a negative number to a positive number. So it includes 0, which means 0 is a plausible value, which means it's plausible that there is no difference. So we have not found support for that council member's belief. We do not have evidence that there is a difference between them because 0 is possible. Okay, so that's the basics. I wanted to show you a few things about how they grade things. This is one thing to keep track of. So a lot of you guys are always worried about, am I rounding too much? And should I be using table B or using the calculator? The truth is they know when they grade on the AP test that different people are using different tools and different amounts of rounding are happening. So they give all the different kind of ways you could do the degrees of freedom and such, and they say what's allowed. So there's lots of different versions of the final answer that's allowed depending on how you managed it. Okay, and then they did need in the parameter statement or in the interpretation the word difference. That was important. And their conclusion, right. So that part B, where you had to say 0 is in the confidence interval, therefore we don't have evidence to prove that they're different. What I just said was not enough because it does need context. So they say that here, that you only get partial credit if you omit the context. So it's not enough to say 0's in there, no evidence. You have to include talking about fire stations and such. Okay, I think that's it. Yep. All right.